When I tell people that I'm a food and sugar addiction counselor, they automatically translate that into the head that I run a weight loss program. So today I would like to really correct that thought. So, welcome everybody to my weekly live, ZIPPI Live. My name is ZIPPI Live I. I'm a registered nurse and certified food addiction counselor. And most of the people who come to me for food and sugar addiction recovery. Yes, many of the people who I treat are overweight. And many of those who are overweight lose significant amounts of weight when they go into recovery from their food and sugar addiction. But it is not, you can't equate that with a weight loss program. Now, I definitely am not knocking the importance of losing weight for people. When I first started abstaining from sugar and then flours and then hyperprocessed foods, with me, it was a gradual thing that happened because I didn't know then the science of food addiction like I do today. But when I went through my own recovery, of course, one of my main motivators was that I was fat. I was very overweight and I couldn't lose weight. And it bothered me terribly. I felt like I was a failure. The one thing that I wanted to succeed most in life was to have like a nice figure and to stop. But it's very, very interesting to see. First of all, not everyone who comes to my program is overweight. I have some people who are really thin, but they feel like sugar controls their life. And this is something that is so interesting to see when I speak to people who are interested in my program, who are thinking of coming to a program of food and sugar addiction recovery. When I start asking them, what do they want from a program like that? Why are they looking specifically at food and sugar addiction? What they say that bothers them most, more than the weight, even people who are morbidly obese will say this to me. They'll tell me that what bothers them most is that feeling of lack of control that they have over their eating. That what causes them the most suffering is that they want to be in control. They want to be able to decide if they're eating some or not, a little or a lot, and they feel like they have no control. Not having control over one of the most basic things in life, which is our food and our relationship with food, causes terrible suffering. It's horrible. And that doesn't have to do with the body weight. That has to do with self-image. It has to do with feelings of, am I able to do this? Am I somebody who is a capable person? Am I capable of taking charge of my life? And this is how people feel. And if you are one of those people, I want to tell you it is not about your character. It is not because you are weak. And many times it is just because addiction is a manifestation that happens in the brain. And it happens in the most automatic parts of the brain. It doesn't happen in the places of conscious thought where self-discipline and willpower are exist. It happens in the places of our brain, the reptilian brain, where there is urges and these things are not necessarily conscious and not necessarily controlled by conscious thought. So yes, one of the major symptoms of food and sugar addiction is obesity or overweight. Yes, weight gain. Because somebody who can't control how much they eat of sugary, starchy, and hyperprocessed foods, chances are very high that they will be overweight and or metabolically ill from the way that they're eating, because these foods cause fat to accumulate in the body. Calorie versus calorie. Sugar is more fattening than fat. It is the most fattening ingredient in our food, and it is in 75 to 80% of the foods in the grocery shop. It's added to them. So today we are consuming more sugar than ever. The foods, these sugary, starchy, hyper-processed foods are cheaper, more available, and more aggressively marketed than ever. So somebody who is more sensitive to the addictive pull of these foods, well, yes, their chances of being overweight are much higher, but it's not one to one. Not everybody who is addicted to food or sugar is overweight or obese, and not everyone who's overweight or obese is necessarily addicted. So I would like to explain what is the difference. This is one of the things that I teach my clients in my workshops and my one-on-one coaching program and my couples coaching program as well. There are basically like three kinds of eaters. There are some people who just eat too much. They're just we call them we call them harmful eaters. They're not addicted, right? They have some control, but maybe they just don't pay as much attention. They're a little bit really don't make that extra effort that you need to make if you want to eat healthy. Because in today's nutritional environment, anybody who is not making that extra special effort to eat healthy will be overweight slash obese or metabolically ill or both. So because our food environment is so obesogenic, it is so promoting obesity and metabolic disease. Because as I said, all these sugary, starchy, hyper processed foods that make us fat and sick are what are cheapest and most available and most socially and culturally accepted to serve at any gathering or what have you. We have people who are emotional eaters. Emotional eaters are people who have trouble balancing out emotions, and then they will use food as one of their coping mechanisms for dealing with emotions. These are the people, for example, who psychological, like different kinds of therapies like mindfulness and CBT and DBT, these things will be very helpful to them. If they can learn to cope with their emotions or past traumas, then many times their eating behaviors will also balance out. But people who are addicted to sugar or foods in general, usually it will be sugary, starchy, hyper processed foods. Nobody really craves lettuce at like 3 o'clock in the morning, let's face it. So people who are addicted to addictive foods, these foods are addictive and they do overstimulate the parts of the brain where addiction occurs in the reward center in the brain, and it overstimulates the dopamine system in our brain. And then what happens is people who are more sensitive to that addictive pull, well, many times they'll call themselves emotional eaters because if they're stressed out, they'll go and eat. They do what's called stress eating. But I think that's a little unfair to call people who stress eat emotional eaters, because then it really says, like, if somebody isn't fat and, if somebody is overweight, either they're like, stupid and lazy, and if they're not stupid and lazy, we see that they're not, and they're still overweight and eating in a very harmful way, they must have emotional problems that they can't cope with, and that's why they're overeating. Not everybody that is true. Some people, it's just that when the dopamine system and the reward center is overstimulated, and that person has a natural tendency to be more sensitive to the addictive pull of these foods, then they will experience a loss of control. What happens is when they eat these foods, it triggers them wanting even more. It doesn't they have this urge, or they want to eat something sweet. And when they eat something sweet, it doesn't make that urge go away. The other way around, it makes it even more. So then they eat more, and then it makes it even more. And then all of a sudden, it's like not eating just in order to feel normal, because the brain gets starved. It's like the brain gets these fake messages that it is starving for something sweet. And then it's like you can't not pick up the sweet. People will tell me, I know it's bad for me. I don't want to eat it, and I eat it anyway. That sounds crazy. But and that can cause also, by the way, emotional distress. But people who really their problem is sugar addiction or food addiction, what will happen is many times their emotions will balance out when they abstain completely from the foods that are addicting them. I always, I tell my clients when we talk about emotional eating and the differentiation between emotional eating and addictive eating is that if somebody quits smoking, right? If somebody smokes and when they go through a stressful period in their life, they start smoking more or they reach out and light up a cigarette, nobody calls them an emotional smoker, right? So it's the same thing. Of course, if somebody has that feeling like food changes the way they feel, then obviously when they're feeling stressed out, they're going to look to the food to calm themselves down, to to sort of like change that uncomfortable emotional feeling. But what happens is for many of these people, and I see this again and again with my clients, which is the most gratifying thing to see as a counselor, as a food addiction counselor, is that these people who moderation doesn't work for them. It just doesn't. There is no such thing as moderation. It's an all or nothing thing. And if that is someone's experience for years and years and years, that they've been trying and absolutely failing at eating in moderation, right? Then maybe it's time to try complete abstinence. Because what happens is when someone abstains completely from the foods that they feel that they have absolutely no control over, then it takes a few weeks for the brain to readjust and the body to readjust. But then what happens is these horrible cravings go away. And actually, even if sometimes there is a small urge for sweet, the person can actually decide consciously not to eat it, not to pick up. And what happens is people start feeling that all of a sudden they're emotionally much more balanced. I can tell you from myself, when I first started abstaining from sugar, I was a young mother. I had 3 small children. Now, 3 small children is hard for anybody. I used to I used to have screaming fits at my kids. And I thought it's because that's what my mother used to do, like with us. And I just, I inherited it from my mother. And hopefully the love and warmth and all the good things that I do for my kids will make up for these screaming fits that I would go into. And it was really, it wasn't something that was actually you could expect when it's coming. It would just like I blow up out of the blue and I just couldn't help it. And when I started abstaining from sugar, after a few months, I realized that it had been a very, very long time since I had had a screaming fit at my kids. And it just so brought home how much sugar changed the way I feel. The same way that cigarettes change the way other than nicotine and cigarettes changes other people, the way people feel, drugs, alcohol, marijuana, whatever it is. People, pornography, people have different things that affect them, that change them. So, yes, overweight, and obesity is one of the common expressions of food and sugar addiction, but it is not a one-to-one thing. And yes, people who their main problem is sugar and food addiction, when they go into recovery and they stop using food as a drug, they will lose weight and they will lose weight easily and without dieting and without being hungry. But it is not necessarily a weight loss program. And many people who are at a very normal body weight but feel like sugar and hyperprocessed foods are just controlling my life. They have no control over their decisions about what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, and they know that they want to eat healthy and they're just not able to. Well, then what does that matter what you weigh or what you don't weigh? My message to you is anyone, no matter what they weigh, how they feel about themselves, who feels like maybe they have a food or sugar addiction, there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. People can recover. It is a amazing journey, and people who don't experience it don't understand how much better life can be physically, mentally, and emotionally. So, if anybody here is listening to this, first of all, if you really liked this video and you want to thank me for this content, please pass it on to two more people who you think maybe this content would be interesting for them. And you can sign up also for my newsletter, and then you can get my live every single week. And I want to invite you to a new project. I have decided to open a WhatsApp group, which will be a admins posting only WhatsApp group for Jewish sugar and food addiction recovery. And I would like to invite you to join it. There will be a link somewhere around here to join this WhatsApp group. Everyone's welcome. It will be with my lives, I will be putting up interesting podcasts and articles there. And also there will be specifically Jewish content for people who are looking to limit or eliminate their sugar consumption, which will be preparation for holidays and things that are, because Judaism is a very food-based culture. We will talk about the specific challenges that come for people who are living a Jewish traditional lifestyle. So if you are interested in joining this WhatsApp group, please find the link below, join us. It's going to give you lots of really amazing content and motivation. This is my live for this week. I'm so happy to thank you very much for being here and listening. And I'm so happy that you have, please give your comments below. Tell us what you think. And I will see you again next week at our new time, Sundays at 8 p.m. Sundays at 8 p.m. Israel time, GMT +2. That is 1 p.m. on Sundays, EST. Bye-bye.